Hello dear viewers of my channel, this is already the 13th part of this manhwa, and if you like to watch videos on it, then please let me know about it in the comments. And here is a guy who was lucky enough to be in this video. If you also want a chance to be in the video, then write something in the comments and maybe you will be in the next video. And I would like to wish you an enjoyable viewing experience. The main character instantly struck a huge number of demons, tearing them to pieces. Such incredible power simply shocked the allies, who thought that Fong was simply tearing their imagination apart. The protagonist thought that he should have already killed enough enemies for the big demon to pay attention to him. So it happened, and the huge demon was indeed incredibly angry, and with all his might was screaming in anger. He instantly began to approach the protagonist, who was preparing to attack, because he thought that the demon was trapped. Suddenly, the demon began to fly away, which amazed the protagonist. He could not understand why the enemy did not approach him and began to go in the opposite direction. While a huge demon instantly landed at the other end of the battlefield, it turned out that the demon landed near the prince, who did not understand why the demon ignored the protagonist and went to him. While the demon started talking about how the prince's body had a very good smell, whereupon people instantly stood up to defend the prince, who was very scared and thought of having many masters to defend. While the demon began to shout that the pathetic people would not interfere with him, then he instantly struck a huge number of the prince's guards who were at the level of a great master. The demon instantly grabbed the prince, saying that he was incredibly hungry and wanted to start his meal with the guy. The prince cried with horror because he thought his life was over, while the protagonist entered the battle and thrust his sword right into the jaws of the huge demon. Fong was surprised that the demon dares to ignore him and attack other people. Then he instantly broke out a huge number of teeth demon, with the words that the demon fears the strong and the weak humiliates. The demon didn't realize what had just happened. He backed off a bit with the thoughts that the sword in the hands of the protagonist was very strange, and he definitely wanted it. The demon started shouting with all his might for his army to start gathering. Then he shouted with all his might, while a huge number of demons appeared near the protagonist, who didn't understand why the demon believed that some little thing could harm him, while the prince cried and begged his father to come and save him. Fong pulled out his pet. Then the vines instantly pierced the bodies of a huge number of demons. Then they appeared near the big demon to the words of the hero that the demon was trapped and now its only choice is to fight the hero. Fong started talking about how if the demon couldn't kill him, he would definitely die in this place. The prince continued to cry and whine with all his might that the hero could just let him out, while Fong asked the prince to be careful not to hurt himself. The demon was out of anger. He was very angry at how Fong was overestimating his abilities. Then the enemy directed an incredibly powerful attack towards the protagonist, who instantly dodged and at a great speed began to approach the enemy. Fong was right in front of the enemy in a split second, then prepared to strike. The protagonist attacked the great demon, after which a look of incomprehension froze on Feng's face. A powerful armor appeared on the enemy's body a moment before Fong struck. Then the demon instantly began to pull out his weapons from the armor. The enemy began to shout that now he also has weapons, believing that now the fight is fairer. The protagonist instantly started to get closer to his enemy, saying that he should have just kept lying in the coffin, while the enemy was able to block the protagonist's quick attack, making Fong think that the sword couldn't handle this demon's weapon. The protagonist felt that the difference between the strength of demons and humans was too big, after which Feng's hands started bleeding, and he thought that he needed to avoid direct confrontations with the enemy, while the demon started shouting that the protagonist's behavior had changed, not understanding where Feng's mindset had gone. The enemy instantly launched a furious attack, planning to finish off the protagonist with a single blow, while Fong only had time to react at the last moment. He didn't understand how such a large weapon could have such incredible speed. While the enemy prepared to finish off the protagonist, who was clearly not prepared for this attack. After a moment, Fong tried to block the incredibly powerful blow from the demon. As there was no way to dodge, Fong began to smile and said that the demon was really crazy to think that he had won. The ground beneath the demon's feet began to crumble. It turned out the protagonist was only pretending to attack, and prepared this trap, where there was a huge amount of pills under the ground. A moment later, there was an incredibly powerful explosion. The demon started screaming in pain and his body was covered in flames, while Fong was preparing to finish off the enemy. But a moment later, the protagonist himself missed the attack from his enemy. Fong was printed in a barrier of vines at a great speed, while the prince continued to cry, because he realized that if the protagonist died he would be finished. As Fong gripped his weapon tightly, Fong began to look completely different. His body seemed to be overflowing with insane power, which was exactly what he wanted. Fong looked at his opponent with an incredibly creepy look that frightened even the protagonist's ally, namely the prince. Fong instantly jumped up from his seat, after which he began to attack the demon's body at a tremendous speed, not leaving it even the slightest chance to defend itself. A moment later, the demon was sitting on his knees. He did not understand how Fong managed to wound him, while the protagonist began to talk about how he would soon end the life of this nasty creature. The enemy was very much frightened by the aura he felt from the protagonist. He saw in front of him just a terrible creature that had incredible power, against which the demon could not go. Due to fear, the demon tried to attack the protagonist, who was only happy that the enemy was resisting and began to approach him at great speed. Then the demon tried to block the lunge of the protagonist, then was shocked at how much power Fong put into this blow. The demon's defense was instantly broken. Fong continued to strike a huge number of blows without giving the enemy even a chance to counterattack, while the demon realized that the strength of the protagonist has increased many times. Fong prepared to strike hard, and a moment later he attacked the demon with a smile on his face. And then Fong continued to smile. The hero seemed to be fully engaged in this battle, while the demon fell to the ground without giving any sign of life. The protagonist looked at his enemy saying that the demon was just a pathetic rat. The demon opened his eyes and saw the prince, who was instantly scared. The demon grabbed the prince, threatening the protagonist to let go of the sword. Otherwise he would just kill the prince. The protagonist started laughing and saying that he would feel sorry for anyone the demon could take hostage. Then Fong prepared to attack, explaining that anyone past the prince. The demon's head instantly flew off his shoulders at great speed. The prince saw it fall to the ground and was just shocked, while Fong felt just fine. The old man started shouting that the hero was confirming the Qin family's pillar status and that he was able to kill the demon alone, while the prince started shouting that the weapon that fell from that demon should belong to the Yi family. The old man felt a surge of rage, after which he interrogated the prince about what exactly he said about that demon's weapon. The prince started to say that as the representative of the Yi family, he was going to give the weapon to the Qin family as a reward, while the protagonist was surprised that the Earth Mother was still inactive. The old man started talking about how the people were already ready to execute Feng's command plan, and also the old man said that they couldn't understand why the statue continued to just stand still. Fong himself couldn't understand why the statue continued to stand still. He thought that there must be some reason for this behavior. The allies of the protagonist rushed over to him saying that they were happy to see him. They were shocked that Fong had actually managed to single-handedly kill the great demon. Then the man reported that they had already managed to kill most of the demons in the city, and asked the protagonist what they should do next. The protagonist announced that it was time to start the second phase of the plan, thinking that the statue would definitely try to stop them. The protagonist and his men went on the attack with the words that they should use all their strength to defeat the enemy. Fong was as determined as possible, basically like the other members of his squad, while the prince thought that the demon was terrifying, but assumed that Mother Earth possessed even greater strength. The prince also thought that Fong was in front of him, and the first blow would definitely hit him. Suddenly something happened behind the prince that shocked him. The prince did not understand what was happening, for a huge wall had appeared behind them, while Fong began to say that it was the measures of the Earth Mother, and that it was the first step by which she was simply trying to cut off the way back for them. At that time, demons that used bows instantly appeared and instantly targeted the protagonist's squad. The girl was worried that their position was much worse than the demons who could just shoot them. At that time, Fong said that although the demons did not have a mind, the Mother Earth could direct their actions. At that time the girl was surprised that the enemy had such a mind. Suddenly they began to hear someone's footsteps. It turned out that they were demons, who were behind the back of the protagonist, after which they were instantly killed by a single movement of the sword of the protagonist. The bodies of the enemies began to fall on the cold ground. Fong began to tell his allies that their enemy can use the earth to bring demons directly to them. The girl at that time thought that she used to think her strength was the greatest among the younger generation, but looking at the protagonist she realized that she was too proud. As Fong spoke to all the soldiers with all his might, he told them that this battle would be more difficult to deal with the enemy than before. While a huge number of demons began to approach them, Fong asked his subordinates if they were ready to fight, and all of them said they were. They began to move towards their enemies, after which the protagonist gave an order, namely that the guys to deal with the little demons as soon as possible. The battle began, in which the guys fought the demons with all their might to clear the way for the protagonist. At that time, Fong continued his movement, trusting all the enemies on the way to his allies. At that time, Fong found himself surrounded by demon archers who were ready to take a shot. Fong instantly asked his pet to make the enemies leave him alone, after which the enemies were instantly pierced by the vines of the protagonist's pet. The vines began to form a bridge to the main enemy, namely the Earth Mother, after which Fong began to talk about going to the enemy first, while the girl asked the guy to be careful. The protagonist began to instantly approach the enemy, saying that it was time for her to wake up, because the guests were approaching her very quickly. At that time, the other girl was surprised that the hero had already gone to the main enemy, while the other girl began to say that they need to take care of other things. After that, they prepared to fight the huge number of demons that surrounded them, while Fong approached his enemy's head, after which the enemy instantly opened its mouth, and Fong flew straight into the creature's mouth. The protagonist was amazed that there was a huge number of hands reaching for him inside. Fong himself was trapped by the huge creature. Then he lost consciousness, and when he came to, he found himself in an incredibly strange space filled with a huge number of plants. Fong was shocked at how rare the herbs he saw in this place were, for some of them were just incredibly rare. Fong continued to look at the huge number of very rare herbs, after which the protagonist instantly came to his senses, realizing that he had just been swallowed by the enemy, and tried to understand where he was. Suddenly, a voice was heard which said that Fong was really inside the monster's body, after which the enemy in a new form greeted the protagonist. Fong instantly prepared for battle, asking what the enemy was up to, while thinking about the fact that he couldn't sense the creature. The enemy began to say that he did not intend to carry out stealth attacks, and also began to say that he would like to cooperate with the protagonist. Fong became more serious as he couldn't understand the motives of his enemy, who said he wanted to cooperate. The enemy began to say that all the plants the protagonist sees are just her gifts. The protagonist said that the plants are indeed too luxurious a gift, because even the strongest people would want such plants. While the girl said that all her words were sincere and asked if Fong wanted to know more, the protagonist reminded her that the big demon was also an ally of the girl, and then she stood still when he killed him and how such a person could be trusted. Suddenly the throne began to appear, after which the girl began to say that she had already resurrected him, and tried to explain her behavior by saying that her mercy had run out. She sat on the throne and began to talk about the fact that the hero was able to kill the demon, and added that Fong was more suitable for the role of her ally. She began to talk about the fact that the hero will get not only plants, but all the demons in the capital retreat with her, which will make the protagonist a real hero in the eyes of other people. She also started talking about giving demons as subordinates to the protagonist to do his bidding, and then she started approaching with the words that Fong would only have to help her rise to the top of the demon clan in gratitude. While she was thinking about the fact that there was some familiar power in the body of the protagonist, she thought about the fact that the demon's life was definitely worth it to gain the protagonist's trust. She hugged the protagonist, while thinking that once the protagonist's level advances to the realm of the void, then he as a fetus would be completely ready. At the same time, the protagonist said with a pitying look in his eyes that he felt sick the moment the girl touched him. After that, the guy started smiling with words that he was really interested in the girl's plan. The protagonist thought that if he could really get what the girl promised, no one else would dare to oppose them, because they would even be able to compete with the Yi family. The girl started talking about how excited she was, and was about to do the first step, which was to mold Fong into a hero. It was at this moment that they came up with a superb performance. Under the gazes of all the people, the protagonist was easily able to decapitate the Earth Mother, after which the allies were incredibly happy that they had won, while the other people watching were thinking about the protagonist's feat. After all, at this very moment, everyone was witnessing the birth of a great hero. It was late in the evening at the Qin family's family estate. The protagonist was having a drink with the other members of the Qin family, and the grandmother said about how Fong was indeed a true genius. The head was also shocked that the protagonist managed to defeat 2 Void Realm monsters in a row, while Fong immediately confessed that he didn't kill the Mother Earth, which instantly surprised the guys. Grandma wondered what exactly Fong was planning to do. The head said that if the hero's words were true, their clan would quickly become the leader, while the old man wondered if the demons would really honor the contract. While the protagonist began to say that he was going to take control of the Mother Earth, the grandmother began to say that if Fong had a plan, she would not say anything else, and then she also began to say that the hero should rest well because tomorrow he was going to be in trouble. The protagonist didn't understand what was going to happen at the award ceremony, while Grandma said that the old fox wasn't planning to give awards to the protagonist just like that. Grandma asked if the protagonist knew about the Mountain Ghost clan, and the guy instantly confessed that he had fought them and thought they were definitely not weak. The grandmother started talking about how the mountain ghosts were gaining more and more power, and assumed that the protagonist would be forced to fight them. This surprised the other men. After the masters rebuilt the main hall, they finally began to discuss merit. The emperor honored the protagonist with the highest award, but gave him nothing after that. Then the emperor began to issue a new order. He started talking about how they were being attacked by the mountain ghosts and that they were harming them. Then he instantly started lifting from the throne and saying that they should fight back, then added that he was ordering the protagonist to go and conquer the mountain ghosts. People were talking about how the ghost clan was too strong and they were worried that the hero might die, while Fong started talking about how he could easily destroy the mountain ghosts and he accepts the emperor's order. The hero was sitting with the guys from the other clans who were hoping to celebrate with the hero's victory for a few days, and he has to go on a mission again. At that time, the protagonist started talking about how if he wins, their country will become much more stable. Fong started to say that if he failed, his family's strength would drop significantly. Then he began to say that the emperor considers the Qin family weak and will continue to try to suppress them, while Fong began to smile saying that he will use the opportunity he got to make the Qin family even stronger. A while later, the protagonist along with a huge army set off, while the prince began to tell his father that if the protagonist could win again, the Qin family's reputation would be higher than theirs. The emperor began to say that the Mountain Ghost clan had a huge number of people who had reached the void level. He believed that Fong had no chance of getting out of this mission alive. The prince began to say that if the enemies really had such strong masters, it would be a problem for them as well. The emperor started talking about how they just need the protagonist to buy them enough time, and the prince assumed that the emperor was going to break through to the realm of the void. The emperor thought that he would indeed make a breakthrough soon, but he was very worried that their enemies had somehow learned how to raise people who had achieved the power of the void realm. At that time, 200 kilometers from the empire's borders. The girl wondered what the protagonist was reading, and he said he was studying history. The protagonist thought that the ancestors of the enemies had once tried to split the country. He also said that all the records of the mountain ghosts had been erased, and it was very scary. The protagonist wanted to check the information in the pavilion, while something flashed over the protagonist's head, after which he instantly woke up the entire cast with the words that they were being attacked by mountain ghosts. The enemies were quickly approaching the protagonist's team on a monster. The soldier tried to escape from the huge bird that was controlled by the enemy, while Fong saw such a picture and got angry, after which he instantly neutralized the enemy who was using the animal. Fong instantly prepared to deliver a fatal blow, then killed the enemy pet. The protagonist began to tell his men that the monsters used by the enemies were level 1 Grandmaster, and that they should prioritize attacking them. While the soldiers were fiercely fighting the enemies, the protagonist noticed one of the enemies who had a higher level than the others and assumed that he was their leader. Fong instantly began to approach at a great speed with the supposed leader of this attack, then instantly jumped to a great height to reach the enemy. Fong found himself right in front of the enemy, and prepared to finish him off with a single blow, but suddenly the enemy's pet grabbed the sword of the protagonist with its beak, after which Fong had to retreat so as not to get a counterattack. The enemy began to shout that the protagonist simply could not defeat his pet. At that time Fong didn't understand why the enemy thought his pet was special. Then he summoned his own, vines instantly appeared from a crack in the ground, then incredibly quickly grabbed the entire body of the enemy, and also the pet. Fong was right in front of the enemy, and was preparing to finish him off with the words that the enemy was too weak. Fong put his sword to the enemy's throat and asked the enemy whether he would choose to talk to him or die. At that time, The girl reported to the protagonist that they had already defeated all the mountain ghosts, and said that they had taken them alive. The enemy couldn't believe his ears. He didn't understand why the protagonist didn't kill them. Fong began to say that with this action he only wants to say that the life of the entire team of enemies in his hands, and suggested that the leader certainly does not want everyone in his team to die. The protagonist offered to just talk, and then promised that he wouldn't hurt the enemies if he did. A while later they were sitting in another place, and Fong asked if the people belonged to the Mountain Ghost clan. The enemy with a saddened look said that they were. He started talking about how their group was elite and that they all had the level of a grandmaster. The protagonist began to talk about what he knew, which was that they kicked out the Mountain Ghost clan for trying to split the country. The protagonist also noticed that only the Yi family had records of some sort of feud with the Mountain Ghost clan. Fong assumed that the Mountain Ghost clan had simply lost the power struggle to the Yi family, which amazed the man because the protagonist was able to figure it out for himself. The man started to say that it was like that, and the Yi family was just deceiving everyone. Fong began to say that the man could leave with his men, which the man could not believe. The protagonist said he did, and then confessed that he had gotten everything he needed. The protagonist's squad arrived at the border fortress, while there were no people on the walls at all. The man began to complain about the fact that no one was guarding the place while the hero was thinking about something. Suddenly, a man ran up and instantly greeted General Fong. The protagonist instantly kicked the guy with his foot, asking why he was the only one who came out to greet him. The protagonist with a creepy look warned that if the entire cast wasn't assembled within an hour, he would simply confiscate their pills. The guy instantly started to leave, thinking that the new commander was completely ruthless. The girl talked about how the military discipline of this place is so weak that it will be hard for them to defend it, while the man complained that this place is just trash. The protagonist talked about how this place has never fallen after its founding. He also added that these people definitely have something. The men gathered and looked disgruntled, while the protagonist thought that they definitely lacked brains. One of the soldiers started yelling about how some boy dared to take their pills, while Fong started saying that as punishment for the soldiers not obeying he was going to beat them with a whip. The guy started yelling about how he was a second-level grandmaster, and the protagonist just wouldn't be able to beat him. A moment later, he received a whip right in the face, and then fell to the ground without realizing how the protagonist did it. Without letting the guy come to his senses, the hero tied his neck with the whip, then instantly pulled him to himself under the words of the man that although the soldiers know about what happened in the capital, but do not know who solved the problem. While the hero was strangling the freak, the man talked about how the protagonist had killed a great demon in the realm of the void, and he was a great hero. The military was shocked, because they had heard that the protagonist's team was able to save half of the capital's population, while the hero assumed that the cocky guy belonged to the Yi family. Fong started talking about how he had a terrible relationship with the Yi family and that the guy was now in his hands. The squad leader instantly fell to his knees and began to apologize for his deputy, saying that despite his shortcomings he had served the country faithfully. The protagonist looked at the man and assumed that he was one of the leaders. Then Fong put his foot on the guy's body, then said that if the commander could defeat him he would spare this guy from the Yi family. The protagonist thought that the military has a huge discipline problem, so he decided to take this opportunity to scare the military and let them know who is the boss in this place. The commander instantly started running towards the protagonist. He was a level 3 grandmaster, and was instantly behind Feng's back, apologizing in advance for what he was about to do, while the protagonist just disappeared right in front of the enemy, then looked contemptuously in his direction, and began to say that the enemy is too slow, which shocked him, but he instantly tried to attack again, after which Fong slightly pushed him with his foot, and the enemy bounced a great distance away surprised by the strength of the protagonist, after which the commander used a smoke screen, and the surrounding area rose very dense smoke, through which nothing could be seen. The enemy thought that the hero would not be able to cope with such a trick, while right in front of the commander's face appeared the hand of the protagonist, who instantly grabbed it wondering that the military man thought that such a smoke screen could interfere with his vision. The enemy could not believe the difference between their forces, because he thought that such a thing is simply not possible, while Fong threw the commander of this poison away, which shocked all the military present. The girl started talking about how the military had lost according to the previously established rules, after which she said that she had taken all the pills they had stored in the warehouse. Fong looked at these pills while thinking that they were complete garbage. Fong announced to all the military that the punishment for laziness and disobedience from now on would be like this. But in return, if the squad behaved well, the hero promised good pills, which shocked the people. They didn't believe that Fong could really supply them with such high-quality pills. Fong started shouting that he only had 2 requests for the military, and that was to obey his orders. The protagonist then confidently said that the military should try to get as many battle honors as possible, and promised that he would generously reward those who tried. The military began to say that Fong simply could not give them such pills, and thought that he was just promising them a golden mountain. Suddenly, one of the soldiers said that he had heard the hero's name, and told everyone that the protagonist was a 6th-grade alchemist. Everyone listened attentively to the guy's words that Fong would actually be able to give them high-grade pills. The soldiers instantly bowed down to Fong, saying that they were willing to follow him. The girl thought about the hero carrying out a great strategy of first intimidating and then giving benefits to people. The girl was worried that it would take a lot of effort for such a huge number of people. At that time, Fong said that she, as his main apprentice, would have to do it all by herself, which shocked the girl. While one of the military men was smiling grimly at the protagonist. The military discussed the fact that the protagonist turned out to be a tyrant, and also talked about the fact that he also offers them incredible pills. The military man instantly preceded the protagonist's order that they should all gather, and the guys were worried that one of them had left. A little while later, night fell. The guards were standing on the warthog and could not help themselves from falling asleep, while the unknown man was sneaking right through them. He was easily able to jump over the wall without being seen. At the time the girl was watching carefully, she thought about the fact that there were spies of the mountain people in this army. She watched as the spy left the area and most likely went before his kin. He moved at great speed through the forest, then instantly arrived in the mountain ghost country, and continued on his way. One of the lads was surprised that the spy had come so early, and inquired why so. At the time, the spy was talking about having something very important to report to their leader. He found himself right in front of the leader of this clan and kneeled down. Then he started talking about how the protagonist was an incredible threat to them. The clan leader was saying that after the report they should discuss how they should deal with the protagonist. One of the clan heads started yelling that they should kill the hero before he gets any stronger, while the other clan head started saying that they should lure the guys into the depths and then ambush them. Suddenly a dagger plunged into the flying bug, as the man said that he alone could easily defeat the protagonist. 2 of the heads refrained from saying anything about the protagonist. The leader began to tell his subordinates that he would go on the attack the next day. He also asked the old man for his opinion, and he simply said that he was not going to interfere with the chapter's tactics. The old man began to leave with the words that the most important thing is that the boys succeeded in taking the fortress. The girl at the time reported to the protagonist that the spy arrived in this place 4 years ago, and then the girl began to say that if the enemy learns of their actions they will be able to take countermeasures in advance. Fong started to say that this was what he needed. He planned to fully see the power of the Void Realm Masters. At that time, the enemies started their attack. They had an incredibly huge army. At that time, the military began to sound the alarm. Fong looked at the enemies and thought that their clan was really impatient. Fong went down to the soldiers and told them to act according to the plan. Then the guys stood together and prepared for the coming battle. The armies found themselves facing each other. They stood and looked at each other waiting for the great battle to begin. One of the enemy squad leaders offered the protagonist to fight one-on-one. The soldiers said that the enemy was at least at level 5 of the Great Master, and had a pet perhaps even stronger than him. The enemy looked completely confident. He thought that he could easily defeat the hero, while Fong easily agreed to the proposal to fight one-on-one, which surprised the soldiers. The enemy was confident that the protagonist was a loser who had just entered the realm of the Great Master, and thought that he could easily kill him. The enemy instantly moved towards the protagonist who prepared for battle. Fong started smiling thinking about the enemy's self-confidence. Then he instantly went to attack the enemy's pet. Fong instantly pierced the body of the huge pet with his sword. Then the enemy was actually left alone with the protagonist, who threw the breathless body of the enemy's pet to the ground. The main character's soldiers were shocked at how Fong quickly defeated one of his opponents, while Fong looked with disdain in his eyes at the enemy, and said that he didn't even count as an appetizer. The enemy began to instantly run away and beg for the hero to keep him alive, while Fong instantly nailed the man to the ground with tremendous force. Fong began to tell his soldiers that he had captured the enemy leader and ordered them to advance. The soldiers instantly began to carry out the main character's order. Thank you very much for watching this video until the end. I sincerely want to thank everyone who writes something in the comments. I am pleased to see your support, and only thanks to you I continue to publish the video, not paying attention to the fact that there are no views at all. Thank you all so much again, and see you soon.